you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
So now we are going to configure the NAS storage. So the whatever the steps we are going to do pre-configuration, configuration procedure and post installation steps, the same steps I just consolidated in a one spreadsheet. So it will be easy for us to track and discuss. Okay. Uh, Pre-configuration steps. So we need to set up a NFS storage environment. This can be configured on any of the physical device, or you can configure on any of the server. So in our lab, I'm planning to configure on one of our NFS server. So that server we planning to choose as our AD server. It's a 192.168.10.70. This server I'm going to configure as a NFS. So the same configuration. So in our pre-installation steps, we are just selecting this server is going to configure as a NFS 192.168.10.70. So we decided which server is planning for NFS storage. And the second point, if we plan to use Kerberos authentication, Kerberos is one of the Windows or NFS authentication methodology. So the Kerberos authentication we can use with the NFS 4.1 data store. Make sure to configure the ESXi host for Kerberos authentication. This option is optional. So suppose if we plan to choose NFS 4.1, we need to configure Kerberos authentication on ESX level. So ESX level, if you want to see the Kerberos authentication, just log into the vCenter server, select the ESXi host and go to the configuration tab. Under configuration, you can just look for authentication options. See, there is an option for under the system, you can see authentication services. When we select the authentication services, you can see the currently our system is in a local authentication only. If you want to join the domain, you can join to the domain and just to scroll down, you can see NFS Kerberos credentials. Even NFS Kerberos credential currently in a disabled state. I'll just show you how to enable the NFS Kerberos credential, and also it's recommended to join our ESX host to domain. If you want to join the system to domain, currently it's in the local authentication. If you want to join to domain, just click on join domain and we can enter our domain name. Our domain name is, if we go to our demo lab inventory, we mentioned that our lab inventory is demolab.com. So the same domain name we can enter here. You can use either uppercase or lowercase, anything is fine. So I'm just giving demolab.com and credentials. So for our demolab domain credentials are administrator, and here no need to give vSphere.local, just administrator and enter the password. So this is the procedure to join our ESXi host to domain. So in the recent task, you can see join Windows domain in progress. It may take a minute to finish the still in progress. In the meantime, we'll try to join the another system also. Select the ESX2 and go to the join domain and enter the domain name demolab.com and login credentials. So second host also in progress, but if you see the below one, ESX01 join Windows domain completed. So select the ESX01. You can see it's joined to Active Directory and our domain name is demolab.com. Even the second host is in progress. It's in progress. In the meantime, we'll start the ESX03. Select the ESX03, go to the configuration tab, authentication services, join domain. Administrator and password. So third system ESX also join domain in progress. In the meantime, we'll check the ESX2 is joined to domain or not. Yeah, it's joined. ESX1 also join, and ESX3 it will finish soon. So once we join to the domain, we need to configure the Kerberos authentication. So to configure Kerberos authentication, again select ESX1, go to the configuration tab, right side select configure, and under configure choose the system. Sometimes system will be like this. You can just expand the system and go to the authentication services. Select the authentication services in the right pane. Scroll down. You can see the below NFS Kerberos credentials. So it is in the default disabled state. If you want to enable, right side there is a option for edit. So click on edit, and for NFS Kerberos credentials also, we already joined to the domain. So you can enter the domain credentials is fine because it's a NFS we are trying to configure on a Windows system. So Windows domain credential is fine. But in the real time scenario, if your NFS is any of the physical appliances, you can provide the respective credentials. Okay. So here I'm just giving a administrator credential. So click on OK. So it's an NFS Kerberos credentials, state is enabled, and username is our Windows administrator account. Similarly, we can add for a ESX2 also. Select the host, configure authentication services, scroll down, choose the NFS Kerberos credential and enter. Once we enter the credential, click on OK. So ESX2 also. So NFS Kerberos credentials are enabled. Similarly, ESX3. Okay, so 3 hosts are added. The same point I mentioned here. Let's go to the NAS lab checklist. So this option is completed. We configured a Kerberos authentication, but anyhow, today we are not going to configure 4.1, but I'm just showing you the option how to configure Kerberos authentication on ESX level. Okay, so this portion is completed. I just make it as done. And the second one, create a vMKernel port group. Normally vMKernel port group, it requires to create on each ESXi host level. If you select the ESXi host, go to the configuration tab, and here you can look for a networking. Under networking, select the virtual switch. Here also you can see the port groups. Port group management network is available. One is VM network is available. Under management network, you can see the vMKernel port group. vMKernel port group 71 is available. If our NFS server is in a different network series, we recommend to create another vMKernel port group. If you want to use, you can use same network also fine. But just for our testing purpose, I will create another vMKernel port group. So before creating vMKernel port group, we need to choose a one free IP address or available IP address. So go to our demo lab inventory spreadsheet. There are few IPs we already in use, and we can pick from the any unused IPs. Either you can choose 81, 82, 83. This one we reserved for vMotion. Okay, we can choose 74, 75, 76. For this 3 ESXi host, I'm going to use these 3 IPs. So first is 71, I will use 74 IP. So we're going to configure as a vMKernel port group. vMKernel port group for NFS. So same way I just configuring these 3. Okay, let's choose the 74 IP and subnet mask gateway is same. So we'll try to create a port group. So we already know how to create the port group. And even if you want to add the additional NIC cards here, so we know the additional NIC cards how to add. Manage physical adapters. If you want to add, you can just add the NICs. It's saying there is no free network adapters. So if we do not have additional NIC card means we need to verify on the physical layer. Select the physical network adapters. There is only one network adapter. So we can add the additional NIC cards. How we can add the additional NIC cards? Just go to the ESXi host, ESX1, select, I think already session is open. ESX1. Okay, we can take the ownership. Let me see the current login. Okay, we are in the administrator credential. Oh, sorry. Already the session is open. Okay, select ESX1. Right click the ESX, go to the settings, and we can add the additional network cards. Let me add the additional NIC cards. Let's say for the time being, we need a minimally 6 NIC cards for each host or 5 NIC cards. Okay, additional, totally 4 added. So that means totally 5 NIC cards we have. Let's select this one and choose the common network bridge. It's a VMnet 0 is actually like a virtual switch. It is a auto bridging. Okay. And similarly select the other one, VMnet 0, similarly other NIC code. Okay, so now click on OK. But in order to apply the changes in the guest OS level, it requires a restart. So we can quickly restart guest. So similarly, I'm just adding to the ESX2 also. A network adapter, another one. Okay, once we added, we can choose the common virtual switch. Now click on OK. NIC code is applied. Again, quickly restart. Same way ESX3. So 5 NIC cards are added. Choose the virtual switch for VMnet 0 auto bridging. Click on OK. So quickly restart. So ESX1 booting stage 2 and 3. So ESX1 is up. So now log into our vCenter server. Just refresh the vCenter because just now we restarted. See now ESX1 is running with 5 NIC cards. So if you want to create a VMKernel port group, additional VMKernel port group, go to the VMKernel adapter and you can choose add networking. And here VMKernel network adapter, virtual machine port group, and physical network adapter. Normally we have two types of port groups. Either you can create virtual machine port group for a standard switch, or you can create a VMKernel network adapter. It's clearly explained the purpose of VMKernel adapter. The VMKernel TCP IP stack handles the traffic for ESXi services such as vMotion, iSCSI, NFS. So today we are creating additional VM network adapter for NFS traffic. So FCOE we already know, fiber channel over Ethernet, fault tolerance, vSAN, host management, etc. All ESX services we need a VM kernel network adapter. And for virtual machine traffic, we need a VM network port group. Okay, but now I'm going to create a VM kernel network adapter for NFS access. Click on next. So we need to choose one IP address. Either you can select an existing network or select an existing standard switch, because we can choose the existing standard switch. our existing standard switch is vSwitch 0, and now click on next. And the vMkernel port group name, I'm just choosing the name as vMkernel for NFS. Is for our easy understanding. If you have any VLAN, we need to enter, or else leave it blank. IP setting, IP settings is IP version 4, and the MTU you can use the default one. And we need to choose the specific feature here. We are going to choose for a NFS. So NFS means you can choose vSphere replication NFC and not NFC. We need to choose the NFS only. So where NFS is comes under the management, and IP settings will assign in the next tab. Click on next. So either you can assign IP address automatically or manual. Recommendation is manual IP address. So our IP address is 192.168.10. We plan to choose 74, and the subnet mask 255.255.255.0, because it's a class C IP address. And the gateway, you can choose override the default gateway for this address. You can choose this one. That means it will get the same gateway. Okay. Now click on next. DNS server is same DNS server. Our Active Directory server IP. Click on next. So you can see all the configuration information. The remaining services are disabled state. Okay. Now click on finish. So in the recent task, you can see the vMkernel port group is added. If you want to see the port group status, go to the virtual switch. See, we have a management network, VM network, and another vMkernel port group for NFS traffic. Okay, we created a additional network. The 71 we can use for host management, and 74 we can use in the backend for a NFS network file share. And if you want to add additional NIC cards, you can just go to manage NIC card, click on plus, and you can add a additional NIC VM NIC 1. So when I select VM NIC 1, click on OK. See, if you see here, two NICs are added. Okay. So similarly, I'm going to create a additional VM kernel port group on ESX2 also. So if you want to create, add networking, VM kernel, and we can choose the existing virtual switch, vSwitch 0. Click on next, and here vMkernel for NFS, same name I'm maintaining. And now here you can choose for a management traffic. Click on next and assign the IP address. Here 74, the last digit is 75, 255. Override, click on next, finish. So vMkernel adapter is vMkernel port group is added, and similarly we can add a additional NIC also for redundancy purpose. So we have two NICs. And same way ESX3, go to the VM kernel, add networking, create the port group, choose our existing switch, VM kernel for NFS, management, click on next, and assign the IP address. It says 76, and subnet mask, next, finish. So we can verify from vSwitch, VM kernel is created, and we can also add the additional NIC that is the recommended for vSwitch. Minimally 2 NICs are recommended. So second NIC also adding in progress. Refresh. Two NICs are added. So let's update our checklist. So our checklist create VM kernel port group. We already created a VM kernel on our 3 ESXi hosts. Now, what is another point? Get the NFS server IP address and share folder name. We already confirmed that we are going to configure NFS on a AD server. We already ready with the host name and IP address. Our host name AD01, IP address is 70, ends with 70. And another point is this point also okay. And choose the NFS version 3 or 4.1. So in order to test our all the vSphere features, better we go with a version 3 feature instead of version 4.1. Okay. And now we can choose the NFS login credentials. We already have the login credentials for administrator. Okay, this is also done, and IP address also collected. Now the next step is configuration procedure. Configuration procedure, add NFS server role on Windows Server 2022. So log into our AD system. AD system is in our workstation system. Log into the workstation, select our AD system, login. Once log into our Active Directory server, we can configure. In order to configure the roles, open the server manager, maximize. Here there is an option to add role and features. So we are configuring NFS role. So just click on here, click on next, and role based feature. But remember, when you're configuring any role, the required is administrator account has a strong password. We need to assign a static IP address, and system should up and running with the latest Windows updates. Windows updates means it's a patches, latest patch. So we already meet three options. Now click on next, role based feature installation, click on next, and click on next. And if you want to configure the NFS, here we already configured the Active Directory. See, the status is showing installed, and we already configured DNS. It is showing installed. Now just look for a NFS role. So here it is not showing NFS role. NFS role is available under file and storage services. So expand the file and storage services. You can see the role for file server role. See, server for NFS. So you can just tick this option, file for NFS role. It's saying some additional features also going to add. So this is the feature for server for NFS. Once we select this role, we finish the configuration, means this server will become as a NFS server. Okay, I'm just selecting this option, click on next. Even let's go back. If I select the server for NFS, in the right side, you'll see the description. Server for NFS enables this computer to share files with Unix based computer. Unix based computer means either it is a Linux system, Unix system, even the ESX also a kind of Unix platform only. So we can able to provide the share the files with Unix based computers and other computers that use network file system protocol. See, NFS protocol. So this is the description about this role. Click on next. And the features, here we no need to select any features. For example, if you want to configure any client for NFS, we can configure this one. Client NFS usually not required. Just for safety purpose, we'll enable this option also. Client for NFS. This is also same functionality. Click on next and restart the destination server automatically if required. Okay, we'll enable this option. It will restart in between. Click on S, click on install. So now NFS server configuration role installation is in progress. This NFS role you can configure on any member server, or you can configure on a AD server. Okay, any Windows machine which is joined to domain, it allows you to configure this role. See, you can see that feature installation succeeded on ad01 demolab.com. Okay, now click on close. If you see here in the below, ADDS, DNS also configured, and file and storage services also configured. Just to apply the changes, click on refresh, and here it is showing that two feature installation succeeded. Okay, no reboot pending options. Here now when we select the tools option, under the tool section, you can see the option for services for NFS console. So this console earlier it was not there. Once we enable the NFS option, you will get this screen, this option. Just select services for network file system. It will open a console for services for network file system console. This is the our server console. So for a services server for NFS, they're giving some information for the information. Before we configuring, just select the server for NFS, right click. You can go to the properties and see that which domain is joined here. So when we go to the server for NFS properties and verify all the tabs one by one, and here enable NFS version 3 support is enabled by default, and file name handling, let's leave it as it is. Locking also leave it as it is. And here activity logging, select the activity for server will record mount and unmount requests, lock and unlock requests, read write requests, create and delete requests. Okay, let's enable all these options. Now come to the network group. Here also network group, if you want to configure, network group means it's a our network interface server information. Either you can enter NIS domain, NIS server information. That means network in internet server information. A network in infrastructure server. Either you can enter NIS server or you can enter the domain name. So our domain server name is demolab.com. Just enter here, click on apply and OK. So this is the first step once we configure the services for NFS. And again, another step is just go to the any of the folder. You can create one test folder here. That is one option. Create one test folder from here. This is one method to create folder and provide the permission. Uh, I will show you two methods. This is one method, and another method is even if you go to the server manager, in server manager left side, you can see file and storage services. When you expand this option, you will see the volumes, disk, storage pools. There is an option for shares. So you can select the shares. Here also you can create the share. If you want to create share here, just go to the task. There is an option to select new share. Okay, so select the new share, and when you're creating the share in the right side, you can see our C drive capacity is 199 GB. Currently 12 GB is in use. So if you want to make the NFS share, you can use minimally 100 GB or max you can make it for a 150 GB. Until 150 GB, we can use for a NFS share. Okay, so if you want to share the NFS share, there is a multiple options. SMB share, SMB also one of the protocol yesterday we discussed, and SMB share advanced and SMB share application, and there is another share is NFS share quick, and also we have NFS share advanced. But for NFS share advanced, it's mainly for a quota configuration and additional policies. But in our scenario, we can choose NFS share quick. Okay, this will be suitable for general file sharing option. So we can go with the NFS quick option because this will also support for Unix based computers. Okay, so choose NFS share quick, click on next. And when we are clicking next, it will show you our Active Directory name, and you can create the shared folder name here, or you can choose the specific path. Suppose our shared folder path, you can select here, click on browse and create folder here. You can create in this wizard, or you can go directly to the C drive, you can create here. Either way is same. For example, I'm creating the name as a NFS share, NFS hyphen share. This is our share name, or we can choose the direct our vCenter level name, NFS Datastore. This is the name I'm choosing, NFS Datastore, NFS hyphen Datastore. The same folder you can find here. Just refresh, cancel, and click on browse. You can see NFS Datastore. So select that folder. This is the type of custom path, and click on next. And here the share name is it's choosing the same share name, NFS-Datastore, and local path to share is C drive folder, and the remote path to share is Active Directory. This is the one. When you are assigning in the ESX level, remember that the remote path to share is /NFS Datastore. This name only we have to use. Okay. Now click on next. And see here we have two types of authentication. Just now we discussed that in our NFS 4.1 it's supported for Kerberos authentication. If you are going with the NFS 4.1, we need to enable this Kerberos authentication. But when you plan to do the NFS version 3, we no need to enable this Kerberos authentication. You can just select as no server authentication. It's a default a server local authentication only, and enable the unmapped user access. Okay, you can just enable these two options. So now click on next. See, it is asking for some share permissions. If you want to assign the share permission, you can assign the share permissions here. When you click on add, you can enter the specific host, which host you want to give this NFS share permission. You can enter the host one by one, or else there is an option to choose all machines. Okay, we have in our lab environment, we have 3 ESX hosts. Instead of adding individual hosts 3 times, I'm just choosing as a all machines. Okay, and the language encoding, you can use the default option, and the share permission, we have a multiple options: read only, no access, read write. But usually if you want to create virtual machine, delete virtual machine, we require a read write permission. So you can change the permissions to read write permission, and also recommend to allow the permission to root access. It says not recommended, but in our home lab, to provide the access to ESX server, we need to allow the root access. So enable this option, click on add. See, all machines, read write and root access is allowed, and encoding is default ANSI code. You can use the default one. Okay. Now click on next. See, this is the default existing Windows OS level permission. We no need to do any modifications here. Just click on next. And you can see the share location is AD01, and the location path this one, and share properties is NFS share. Protocol we are using NFS protocol. NFS protocol means network file system. So now click on create. So we are creating NFS share completed, set NFS permissions also completed. Now click on close. Okay, see, this option is completed. Now let's minimize and we can update our checklist. So add NFS role on Windows Server, we just now completed. And the next point is create a folder and provide NFS share permission, allow root access. This point also, just now we created the share also. Okay, so that point also finished. And in the now next point is in the vSphere client, go to the object navigator, browse the host and cluster, and you can under the data center or in a cluster level, you can just right click the menu, storage, new data store. We are going to create a new data store from vSphere client level. So let's log into the, we already provided the NFS share role and also provided the permission. Now let's log into the vCenter server and select the ESXi host. In the ESXi host, you can choose, instead of configure, you can just go to the data store tab. You can see the existing data store. Currently on the ESX1, we have only the local data store is available. ESX1 local data store. But this data store is local data store. Now, if you want to add a NFS data store, there is an option for actions. So select actions tab. You can find the multiple options. Here, look for a storage option. There is an option for storage, and you can choose new data store. So when you select the new data store, it will show you 3 options. You can find VMFS data store, NFS data store, and virtual volume. Virtual volumes means vVol. So, but what is our relevant data store now is NFS. So create NFS data store on a NFS share over the network. So we are just adding within a virtual network only. So over the network, we created the NFS share. So now click on next, and which version we need to choose. We haven't configured the Kerberos authentication. So, and also to test our all vSphere features, the best method to choose is NFS version 3. So just select the NFS version 3, click on next, and you can enter the NFS share name. What is our NFS share name? During the creation of share, it's already shows that when you creating the name, you can choose any of the specific name. Let's say I'm choosing the name as a NFS hyphen data store 0-01. I'm just creating the name as a this name, NFS hyphen data store hyphen 01, because it is a first number, first data store. I just created as a -01. And folder name. This folder name should be this path. This folder name, it's we have to give as a shared location path. So that name is slash NFS hyphen data store. Here the naming convention should be same as our NFS. Let's log in and verify quickly. The name is, even if you go to the C drive folder, just refresh here. This icon also see, if you see the normal folder icon, it's a normal folder, but NFS share, the icon is looks like this. Okay, and the name is NFS hyphen data store. Only D is caps, remaining all small. So we'll enter the same way. Okay, NFS hyphen data store. And server name, you can enter either your domain name or IP address. Let's say we can enter the IP address 192.168.10.70. Okay, this is our NAS server IP address. So this is the how we can configure the name and configuration details. So now click on next. If you want to choose this NFS data store only for read only, you can just tick this option. But we no need to configure only read only. We need a read write permissions. So now click on next. See, when you're ready to complete NFS version 3 data store name, this is all the summary information. Now click on finish. When you click on finish, create NAS data store completed. See, NAS data store is created. So this is our test lab. We created the NAS data store as a our NAS data. We configured this NAS data store from the Windows system. But in the real-time scenario, instead of configuring on Windows NFS feature, we may use to configure directly on a physical NAS box. Even in our previous lab, we just tested how our NAS storages. Like if you open a browser in the Google, if you type like HPE SAN or HPE NAS box, if you type NAS storage, you will see some of the images. See, this is the kind of actual real NAS boxes. Even this NAS box also, when you purchase the NAS box, they will provide you some installation manual. As per the manual, we need to configure the NFS storage. But if you want to configure NFS on Windows, whatever the procedure we followed, this is the same procedure we do in the real time also. Log into the Windows operating system and you can add the role for NFS role. How we can add the NFS role? Just go to the server manager. Under the server manager, you can enable the role for NFS role. I'll quickly show you again. Just go to the server manager, add role, and here only we configure the role. This role is configured. Once you configured, in the left side, you can find a file and storage services. Okay, so let's minimize this. Log into our vCenter server. We have successfully configured on ESX1. Similarly, you can configure on ESX2 also. So how to configure ESX2? Select the host, go to the data store tab, actions. What is the option we need to choose here? We need to go to the host, storage, new data store. Okay, select NFS and you can enter the NFS version 3 and choose the data store name. And remember that better to maintain the same name for all hosts. So I'm just choosing the same name, and even the folder also same, and IP address also same. Click on next, click on finish. See, NFS data store is added. And same way NFS ESX3, go to the actions and select the storage, new data store, NFS, click on next, NFS3, and choose the data store name. And here also folder name, IP address. Click on next, finish. See, we successfully added the NFS data store for all the 3 hosts. And today's session, we discussed the our ESX level VMFS and NFS storage is considered as a shared storage. How it is shared means just go to the data store tab and we can see local data store. We also have a NFS data store. When I select the NFS data store, in the right side, you can go to the host tab. See, we have a all these 3 hosts are accessing the same storage only. Is it clear? 3 hosts accessing the same storage, that is nothing but a shared storage. But our shared storage format is, you can see from the data store format here. See, data store format is type, it's configured as NFS configured the file system as NFS file system. File system name is NFS, even the protocol name also NFS. And the version for NFS is NFS version 3. And we also have latest version, which is NFS 4.1. Okay, so this is how we configure the NFS in the real-time scenario also. But in the real-time scenario, only difference is there will be a physical device, NAS device. On that NAS device, most of the time our storage team will help you to configure the NAS box, and storage team will provide you the NAS box shared volume or shared folder information. That folder you can enter here. But our as a VMware engineer, our responsibility is come to the data center storage, go to the actions. When you are adding, you can just choose the storage and new storage. Go to the storage, new storage. While adding the storage, choose NFS. Whatever the details is required here, this information we can get it from the storage team. Even the data store name, it's our convenience. We need the NAS device actual share folder name and IP address. These details we need to get it from the our internal storage team. They will provide the details. Okay, so once you get these details, it's simple to add to our vCenter server level. This is about NAS storage configuration on vCenter and ESXi level. Let's minimize and we can see for a checklist. See, new data store we created, we selected the type as NFS3. And if you want to assign for multiple hosts, even we assigned for 3 hosts. And the data store name, shared folder name, and NFS server name or IP address. We given all these details. So until now, we completed. And even the if we creating a storage at a data center or cluster or host level, mount the data store. We already mounted the data store. And review the configuration options, click finish. We reviewed the configuration options and we click the finish. So we successfully completed the NFS configuration procedure. And now if you observe the NFS post installation steps, what is the post installation steps? Validate the NFS data store. We just now validated our NFS data store is successfully configured. And also when I click that NFS data store, it is accessible to all our ESXi hosts. So this validation also completed. And last step is, if you want to create virtual machine, you can create virtual machine and verify the virtual machine files on NFS data store. Suppose we'll do the 2 tests. One test is I'm directly log into our AD DNS server. This is also not only AD DNS role, we also configured NFS role on this server. Suppose I just open the folder, our NFS share folder, go to the C drive, open the NFS share folder. I'm just creating a one test file. Let's say the file name is testing the NFS data store. I given the same name. Let's copy and open the notepad and just save it. If you see, the file size is 1 KB and we created on a NFS shared folder. And if you want to observe this text file is really created or not, just log into our vCenter, go to the data store, and under the data stores, select the NFS data store, right side, go to the files. When you go to the files, see there is a testing the NFS data store file is created. Okay, and similarly, if you want to test the virtual machine creation, you can choose any one ESXi host, or you can just right click the cluster, right click, you can choose new virtual machine. We know how to create a virtual machine. Just create a virtual machine new, and just for testing, I can just mention as NFS test, NFS test VM01, and click on next, and it's already selected to cluster. And it's saying that select cluster is not DRS mode. Please select the specific host. OK, we can choose the host name as a ESX2. Now click on next. And here we are planning to deploy the VM on a NFS data store. So click on next. And it's a default compatible with ESX 7.2. Next. And if you any operating system, let's say I'm choosing the latest Windows operating system, click on next. This is our summary detail. But before adding the storage, we should verify whether we have enough space or not. Just for our testing purpose, I'm just adding only 15 GB minimal disk space, and the disk provisioning thin. And also our important settings, I'm just modifying adapter type VMX 3. And this network adapter differences, I will explain in the separate class. OK. And these all the devices. Let's leave it default. Click on next. See, this is the summary information. Click on finish. So in the recent task, you can see virtual machine creation is in progress. See, already NFS test virtual machine is created. If you select the NFS test VM, go to the summary tab, See, you can see the storage is created under NFS Datastore. Go to the NFS Datastore and expand this folder. You can see the virtual machine files here already created. So these files are virtual machine configuration file, and also the another file is also a VMSD file created, VM disk file also created. Even if I power the same files, if you want to observe from direct NAS storage also, go to the NFS server. See, there is a folder is created. If you open, you will see the files. Okay, so the same test we observed in the our validation purpose. See, create virtual machine and verify virtual machine files on NFS Datastore. We verified on both vCenter level as well as NFS server level. So we successfully completed the NAS storage configuration. So please let me know if you have any questions on this lab. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And now finally we can just quickly update our discussion items. So today we discussed the vSphere storage overview, and we compare the physical and virtual architecture differences. Mainly in our virtual architecture, storage is not a local storage, it's a shared storage. Shared storage means it's a NAS or FCSAN, iSCSI virtual SAN or virtual volumes. All the four data stores are considered as a shared storage. Okay, that is important point. And we observe the storage technologies. We observe all the storage technologies and also discuss the conceptual diagram and comparing all the protocol comparison we discussed, and architecture, NFS architecture, detailed architecture and components also we discussed. So today, apart from all our 4S storage types, we just covered the within our four storages, VMFS, NFS, vSAN, vVols. We covered the NFS storage, how to configure NFS storage on ESX level. And within VMFS, we tested for local storage. We haven't tested the iSCSI SAN and FC SAN. iSCSI SAN, we can discuss in the next session. Once we familiar with VMFS, and later I will show you the both vSAN and virtual volumes. Mostly vSAN and virtual volumes, they both are considered as a software defined storages. Okay, so next session we can discuss with iSCSI SAN. Okay, so that's it for today. If you have any questions, let me know. And the lab also we completed for NFS Datastore configuration and management. So as of today, we covered until now totally 50 topics we covered, and the lab sessions we completed 34 labs. Please be practice the lab at home. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Okay. Any questions? If no questions, we can end the session here. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.